What's up, brother? How you doing this evening?
Not too bad. How you doing, man?
Let me. Is that out of your truck?
It is, yeah. I pulled it up to my garage. All my stickers are on my toolbox down here, so I couldn't really use them for a backdrop, but I figured this will work.
That is awesome, and you're only the second person that has done that on the podcast. Jeff Keller. Jeff Keller is the first one that did that. Everybody really got a kick out of that.
Nice.
So I'm sure everybody will really enjoy what you got going on there. And I've got so many questions for you because I have not had a one-on-one with somebody that's done leak detection yet. And you are really unique in the aspect of the type of leak detection that you do. I've watched your videos, and there's a lot of things on those videos that I haven't seen before, right?
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
but first, sorry to
Something
cut you
different
off.
every day for sure.
Absolutely, sorry to cut you off. But first, kind of give everybody an introduction on who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Right on. My name is John, known as the Leak Doctor on Instagram here. I am from the San Francisco Bay Area. I cover pretty much for those who live around here. I cover as far south as like San Jose area, as far north as Bodega Bay, Jenner, and then all the way out to Dixon out there. So it's a pretty big area we cover, doing leak detection, repair, pretty much in everything from residential, ponds, pools to municipal water mains. So we're a full service leak detection company out here in the Bay.
That's great. That's great. Like I said, there's a lot of things that you do that I haven't seen yet here on Instagram. Besides yourself, I mean, the pool stuff. You get fully suited up like you're going scuba diving, right?
Oh yeah,
and that's really cool to me, and then you pull out the saw. It seems like you do a lot of work on pools, like you said, ponds, and anywhere where there's pipe that you can detect that there's a leak, right? Um,
exactly.
Absolutely. So give us a little bit of a background on how you got started, how you were introduced to the industry.
Um, well, I'm 30 now. I just turned 30 last month, so I kind of
Happy belated birthday.
thank you. Yeah, yeah. Wasn't expecting the whole COVID thing, but we made it work. I got into the trades. Well, I grew up around here. My high school job was In-N-Out Burger, which really actually taught me how to work pretty hard, which I'm very thankful for. From there, I got in a job at a warehouse for a garden center and worked there until I was about 19, maybe 20, where I really was starting to think about, my future. And I had always heard, getting a trade was the way to go, especially for someone like me, good with my hands. Wasn't the best in school, had, the ADD, ADHD kind of thing. So it was like, hey, get a trade. My all the guys I looked up to always told me that. They're like, find a trade, get into it. So my main goal was to become an electrician, surprisingly. That's what I wanted to do. I was like, oh, I want to be an electrician, mainly for the money aspect. It had nothing to do with working with electrical or anything like that. But so that was kind of what was on the back burner while I was doing the warehouse thing. So then from there, I was trying to get into the electrician union. I got a job at a construction company called Maverick, which isn't around anymore, but I was a laborer there. And it kind of, it was cool. I mean, for anyone who's been a laborer before, it's especially starting out 20 years old, it's not the most fun. It was kind of a shady company where I had to chase a guy down to get paid every day kind of thing. So yeah, it put a little bad taste in my mouth, but I did that for about 6, 8 months, moved over, continued to be a laborer, but more for stonemasonry. Got in with a better company, did that for a while until I landed myself in chimneys and gas fireplaces, which kind of was my start into the plumbing world, just messing with gas and gas fixtures, and learned a lot about laying brick and building chimneys and, realigning, putting gas fireplaces into, new construction. Saw some of the some of the cool, as you know, we see some awesome properties. Um,
Absolutely.
saw like, yeah, the rich mucky mucks of San Francisco. I was in their big mansions doing their fireplaces and shit. So I did that for about, say about 4 years till I was 25. From there, I kind of saw the electrician union not really working out. It's high demand over here. For really any union, it's pretty high demand. So I went on Craigslist and was just like, I want to learn a reputable trade, plumbing or electrical, or HVAC, or, something that involved more thinking than laying bricks all day. Not down talking laying bricks. I love laying bricks, but, just something to make me think a little more. And, I saw this job on Craigslist. It was for a plumbing apprentice. Ended up being a leak detection company here in the Bay Area, which, in my head, I thought a leak detection company would find like a dripping faucet in a house. I had no
Right.
idea what what leak detection really was. But they gave me a chance. They hired me up. The company I work for, we work for the company. We work under their contractor's license, but we are in a way subcontractors where we have our own vans, we bid our own jobs, and kind of, rarely see the bosses. It's all phone communication. We do our reports on our phones. We send them in. I started out here, and for the first year I was just doing repairs and really, busted my ass and loved what I was doing. It was this whole new world of things I could, figure out. I was like, oh, what, a pressure regulating valve? Like, just figuring out all this new stuff that I'd never been introduced to before. And then, within a year and a half, I made it damn near to the top. I'm, top producer the last 4 years. And at this point, I just had my sit down with them, and it's kind of a company where there isn't really a manager. There's just the owners. But we are establishing to kind of give them a break and me take over a somewhat manager position here. So
Very nice, very nice. That's great to hear
yeah.
that you're moving along, moving up the ranks within the company that you work for. Now, is there one person in your life that inspired you to pursue this career, or just inspired you to stay on the right path? Whether it be your father, your mother, uncle, aunt, anybody in your family. Is there one person that really pops to
Yeah, I mean,
your thoughts?
honestly, I'd say my neighbor growing up.
Really?
I grew up with my mom, only child. Dad was, he was away. My neighbor was a stonemason, and he worked for a union, and he actually did. It's pretty amazing. He was kind of a Star Trek nerd a little bit, and he would get these props from Star Trek, and he would make rubber molds of them and cast them with fiberglass resin and cast resin, duplicate them, send them out, and he was just a real hands-on guy. And I was up there damn near every night. He taught me how to weld really young, like concrete, all these cool things. I mean, I remember science class, like everyone makes their volcanoes,
Right.
Mine was half a volcano with like the plexi resin. Oh, I mean, it looked like you buy it in a store. Like I remember one of the kids was like, or what did I was being a little asshole. I was like, mine's better than yours. And they look at me, they're like, yeah, well, I didn't buy mine at a store. And I'm like, nope, I made this. I had help, obviously, but so that's the guy who definitely got me to where I am for sure, as far as trades. And he really pushed me. As soon as I got this job, he's like, you don't want that job. Didn't really see see it going anywhere, and he was pushing me to go into the water department or something like that. And it ended up taking me some places, so I'm real happy I stuck with it. But
That's great, man. I remember when I was a kid and we had science class and all that, and we had these projects. And I remember telling my mom was like, "Don't you want to make a volcano like from scratch and newspaper and glue and all this extra stuff?" And I was like, "No, just go to Michael's and go buy that, and just put it together. Like I don't want to do all that extra work." I was never a big fan of school. I'm not encouraging any kid to drop out of school or anything like that. But my thing just wasn't for me. But moving along, I know you mentioned something about your father not being around very often. Is that a topic you want to touch on really quick, or you want to kind of just pass
um,
through that?
yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I mean he was a good father. I mean, he is a good father. He's still around. He made some bad financial decisions when I was young, and he ended up going to prison for most of my childhood. So he was dropped me off at school when I was 10 and just said, I'm not going to see you for a while. And pretty much my relationship was with him until I was 21 was driving up to Lompoc and visiting him there with my mom every 2-3 months. Not not a deadbeat dad at all.
Right.
He was a good guy. He is a good guy. But circumstances he just wasn't there. So I mean that was my relationship with my father. He got out when I was 21, so he was there about 11 years. Um, Still see him, probably every couple weeks. He's older now. He could be my grandpa. He's
Right.
probably 84 right now. Um, but yeah, I mean we still have a great relationship. It's just we didn't get the father son relationship that is typical.
Right. That must have been tough, him being gone for 11 years or so when at that age, those are probably some of the most important times of your life as you're growing up and kind of figuring things out and navigating life as a child, right?
Oh yeah.
Must have been really tough on your mother. But like you said, I'm sure he just made bad decisions. My father has a similar background, not 10 or 11 years, but a few years. He wasn't around because of those reasons. I was a baby at the time, so I don't really remember much of it. But
Yeah.
that doesn't take away from the individual. Sometimes you make bad decisions, and all you can do is learn from them and move on with life and try to do better things, right? Uh,
Exactly.
I just wanted to touch on that really quick, just because when I heard that, there's a lot of similarities in
Hmm.
my life. So, but anyway, moving forward, tell us a little bit about your personal life as far as what do you like to do? Do you have any hobbies? Do you have a family? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I honestly, I mean, I just posted this meme, man. It really made sense to me. I do love plumbing. I love working with my hands, and I do make that my life a big time. But I do have a fiance. She comes first over all of that, of course. As far as personal life goes, we were actually planned to get married last weekend. Um, but due to all the COVID stuff, we had to postpone. So we've been engaged about 2 years. Um, we've known each other, or we've been dating, I think like 6 years now. We've been friends, good friends for 10 years. She's definitely the one, but you know, a few more months isn't too bad. So we're not really tripping too hard on that. We got the refund to the place we're getting married at, luckily. But yeah, I mean, I'm in California, so we're still dealing with this lockdown here. And lately, I don't know how many times I've cleaned this garage or cleaned my van. I was
Try to stay
watching it.
busy, huh?
Yeah, staying busy. I was watching your podcast here. My phone's sitting on my tool chest. I was just cleaning, organizing each drawer. Um, but yeah, no, we're just hanging in there, waiting for things to reopen. Last weekend we went for a road trip up north and just kind of drove around. There's not too much to do besides go to grocery stores out here. So and
100%.
hikes. We've been going on a lot of hikes lately. But other than that, yeah, I mean, we used to we used to go to the gym and go climbing and stuff like that. Can't really do that at the moment, but um, hopefully we'll be opening up shortly and we can start, living our life again.
Absolutely, 100%, man, and that's awesome. Congratulations to you and your fiance, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm really excited for you. I'm married myself. I've been with my wife for a decade now, and we've been married for several years. Can you tell us a little bit about what comes along with that? Planning a wedding. I mean, that's a tough task, isn't it?
It definitely is. I don't want to be that guy, but I kind of am the guy that kind of left it to her. She's been planning for the last 2 years. We got
Wow.
we got engaged in New York City
Wow.
2 years ago, and she's been, we kind of wanted a long engagement, so we were. That's why this isn't really affecting us too much, but she put a hell of a lot of work into this wedding, so it was kind of a bummer that it did get canceled. But at the same time, we've been on a payment plan to like get this nice place to get married at, and we just got a big lump sum back, and we're like, hey, do we want to do this still? Let's just do a small wedding and keep this
Yeah.
for a house. So we're yeah, I mean it's a lot went into it for sure. She would be the one to talk to more about it.
Totally understand. Absolutely. I mean, we actually went with a smaller wedding. We just kind of went to the court office, got married, and decided, like you said, to use the money to go out on vacation and
Exactly.
kind of just spend it all as a family. Actually, I'll be honest with you, man. It's been a while since we've been married, and we haven't had our honeymoon yet. Every
Really?
every vacation we've taken with the kids. Because we had kids before we were married.
Okay.
And so every vacation we've taken with the kids, which is great. We're very family
Oh
oriented,
yeah.
family. So it's amazing every time we go out there and we have a great time. Um, Really quick question before we move back into the trades.
Yeah.
Where in New York City did you engage? I'm from New York, by the way, so I'm just
Oh,
interested in
okay.
finding out. Yeah.
It was in Manhattan on the lower west side, I believe, or lower east side at this what's the name of it? This little Irish bar. My mom's back and forth from New York all the time, so we were out there with her. She has her local spots. Finnegan's Wake is the name of it.
Okay. Yes.
Finnegan's Wake.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Um,
I'm familiar with that.
and I popped the question in. I'm sorry. We went to Finnegan's Wake after I popped the question. I didn't pop the question in a bar. Um, we
Still would
we
have been
were
cool.
we were walking through Central Park. It
Nice.
was freezing. It was Christmas season. I mean, it was cold. So popped the question, and we're like, let's hit the bar. Let's
There
go
you go,
warm up.
man. What better way to do that? It's funny. My wife and I, bold eyes, you'll see her in the comments. She's very
Yeah.
involved. And when we first started dating, one of our favorite things to do was to go to this place called McSorley's, which is an Irish bar by the train station. I'm actually originally from Westchester, New York, which is Ossining, New York. I'm not sure if you ever heard of Sing Sing Prison. Well, that it's a historical prison. I know it's kind of crappy to be recognized by that, but the
Yeah.
town is it's kind of like it's a historical district, right? And that's where we're from. So this bar, we used to go there every week, and I mean, it was like we wouldn't miss a week, and we'd go over there, have drinks, and play darts, and it was just a great time. So that's awesome to hear that you were able to be you were able to propose in New York City.
Oh yeah.
That's really cool. So moving along, we'll get back into the trades, right? I mean, that's all aspects of life is really interesting, and I like to bring that part of it here to the audience to help them relate to your story, right?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so we're gonna get back into the trades, right? So now you're working for a company, right?
Hmm.
You're moving up the rankings. You're pretty much about to become a manager. You're about to start running things and all. Tell us a little bit about your day-to-day duties. Like, what do you do as far as leak detection? I know you mentioned a few things about pools, ponds, and all of that, but could you get into a little bit more detail?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, I mean, a typical day for me looks like anywhere between 4 and 6 jobs. We have, I'm sure most people are familiar, or some people are familiar with it, Fleetmatics, where it's, I have a separate work cell phone where I have my jobs for the day, the location of them, and what kind of job they are. Um, we do such a broad amount of things. I can start on a very common one is DWM, which is domestic water main. I'll go to the comments. I'll see what the issue is on why they called. So a very typical one is meter movement without water consumption. So their water meter's moving, they don't know why. I come in and or it says something else like water surfacing out of their living room, or leak on the irrigation line. Sometimes I do run into homeowners that do know things and have isolated it to their irrigation line or their hot water line or something like that. Which that makes it a little easier when I get on site. But then I have the ones that just don't know anything, and it just says I got a notice from the water department. I don't know what's going on. So what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll do my just preliminary tests. I'll go check the water meter. I'll say, hey, the water meter's moving. I'll go shut the house off. Water meter stops. All right, it's inside. Very common around here. We have slab foundations in Eichler homes, where they run the hot water line and the cold water line and the sewer drainage under the slab. And then in the instance of Eichlers, they actually have radiant heat in the slab as well above that. And what I'll do is we use what's called it's called a leak finder, but it's pretty much a electronic stethoscope. And I'll go around to the fixtures and I'll listen to the fixtures for the highest, it's called electronic point signals or electronic leak signals.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So where I hear it the highest typically could mean one of two things. It's either the end of the line or it's closest to the leak. So from that point, once I've determined the area of the home, I'll put either a helium or a nitrogen in the line. Turn the water off, put the helium and the nitrogen through a fixture, sink, angle stop, hose bib, something like that. And I'll use that same sound amplifier and listen on the slab until I'm on it. We also, I shouldn't admit this, I don't use it as much anymore, but we also should be line locating it before we do that to see where the line is. But I'm pretty good with the sounds. I can typically get right on top of it. Then from that point, I'll write up an estimate and I'll say, hey, this is what it's going to cost to, they have two options. Jackhammer here, repair the pipe, relay some concrete, put a patch down. That's the cheaper alternative. The other one, I could do what's called a manifold test where I'll figure out what line it is that's leaking, give them an estimate to replumb that line specifically. Or if they're never want to deal with it again, they just, hey, let's just replumb the home. The issue with Eichlers is they don't have an attic or a crawl space, so it's all over the roof. We got to insulate the pipes, and that, it's not the prettiest looking thing, but they never have to deal with the jackhammer in their home again.
It's exposed, pretty much, is what it is. Yeah.
Exactly. That's pretty much our most typical jobs. I do a lot of commercial jobs with bigger pipes. Last couple weeks ago, I did over in San Bruno. It's for this construction company. They were putting in a new city main. It was new 6-inch HDPE. And they had all the curb stops run into all the different meters for about 27 houses, but they haven't reconnected to the houses. So it's still going off the existing city main, but it's not passing a pressure test. So I came in, we set for bigger lines, you can't just use tanks of gas to put in there. So set up a big air compressor with my gas and pressurized the line, found it on a saddle fitting from the 6-inch to the 1-inch feeding a home, which is, for new pipe, it's usually not going to be a deteriorated line. It's probably a joint somewhere. That's a typical, or that's one of the more major commercial or municipal jobs I do. Our kind of bread and butter, what keeps us busy, we get a lot of the insurance claim work. Right. So let's say somebody has a flood in their home and they call their insurance and they say, hey, I need to open up a claim. My house is ruined. I come in and I determine what caused that. And it's anywhere from like sewage flood in the home to there's water just dripping out of the ceiling. I don't know why.
Right.
And it's kind of fucked up. Just a lesson to be learned. Insurance is not always on your side. I
Right.
come in there. I come in there to determine what the leak is and determine the amount of time it's been going on. So if there's mold or dry rot involved, I have to say it's over 2 weeks old. The insurance will not cover that. So I do a lot of jobs where it's very obvious what's leaking. You know, I'll get there and it's like every time they flush the toilet, it drips out from down, like out of a light fixture. I'm like, all right, it's, you know,
Right.
either your wax ring or your drain line right there, you know. And the only reason the insurance is paying us $400 to be there is to get a report from us as a third-party company saying it's a long-term issue. It's fucked up, but
Hey, that's the way it works, right? You know, I mean, we do insurance, we do home warranties and all that stuff over here as well. And let's touch a little bit about the ponds and pools, right? Tell us a little bit about that. I see it on the comments here. You know, people are kind of confused on what the whole pond thing is about. What can you possibly do as far as leak detection inside of a
okay, I'm
pond?
sorry. The reason I meant more fountains. The reason I said pond is I'm doing this job on Tuesday. It's this big commercial fountain pond thing out there in the South Bay. And yeah, I don't know why I said ponds, but
That's all right.
yeah, Tuesday I'm dealing with that, and it's you know, they have some big, huge lines, and I think it's been shut down since the whole COVID thing went down, and they just want to test it for leaks. See, I can kind of show you guys. So I'm dealing with the big suction line for that pond fountain thing. They got a 10-inch
Okay.
suction line, so I'm going to put this big ass plug in there, plug it off. I got one for the other side. Do my pressure test, make sure that 10-inch line holds pressure. You know, we got the 6-inch return lines. Pretty much I'm going to be there just testing lines all day. I don't think there's any water loss or any problem with priming the system, but they just want pretty much able to sleep at night. There's nothing wrong with our plumbing, our underground plumbing. But yeah,
Absolutely.
that's the other thing I do. I do a lot of pools, spas, which, you know, is really big during the summer around here. It's all the in-ground pools. All their plumbing runs underground. So we come in, same idea. We pressurize it with the helium, the nitrogen, and we use sound. I have a special sniffer that detects helium, which kind of helps you get in the area.
What's something like that run for?
Oh man, all the equipment is really freaking expensive.
I
Just my
bet.
sniffer alone is $2,000. The leak finder is like $2,500. You know, I think this plug right here is like $500.
The plug is $500.
Yeah, this
Wow.
one right, like my small plugs are $60 just for 1.5-inch lines.
Do you have to fill that up with air and to you know seal it up, or is it already inflated?
It's got a little Schrader valve up here,
Okay.
so like it's pretty much like a tire. My tanks of gas, they all have regulators, you know. Put my gauge up there. I'll pump it to what I need it to pump to. All the
Gotcha.
plugs are different. I think this is a 60-pound, so I'll set it to 60, fill it up. This is just a plug, but I have similar ones with a secondary valve on it where I'll actually feed the gas in. So it's like a bladder.
Gotcha.
You know, where it fills up and puts water in. I'm doing essentially the same thing with gas.
Okay.
You know, if there's not a leak, you don't really need much gas because all you're doing is pressurizing the water in the pipe. But if there's a leak, you know, it takes some gas to find leaks on these bigger pipes. But smaller pipes, I mean, I can use one tank for, I don't know, maybe 8 jobs, slab leaks, you know, 3/4-inch lines, that sort of thing. But yeah,
Now,
and
as
then
far as the sorry to cut you off, man.
yeah.
I apologize for that, but one thing I'm really interested in finding out why would you suit up and go scuba diving? So, like I'm just I don't know much about leak detection. I am a service plumber, commercial residential service plumber.
Uh-huh.
Usually, we recommend the customer to go with another company to find to detect the leak, and then we'll come in. If we have to beat up the slab, we'll go ahead and beat up the slab and repair it, or we offer the more common repipe of the home, right?
Exactly.
Um, but as far as scuba diving inside of a pool, I'm just a little confused on how that works out. I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. So you're familiar with boilers. You know, you got
Right.
your return and your feed and your return. Pools are the same way. They have a suction and a return. Instead of through a heater, I mean, they go through heaters too, but it's more of a filter to keep the water from turning green. Um, a lot of suctions on pools are at the bottom of the pool.
Gotcha. Okay, I see where this is going now.
Yeah. So what I'll like try and do if I don't want to go swimming is I'll test hydrostatically because you know the weight of the water is going to produce at least 2 or 3 psi. So I can kind of go against that until I see bubbles come up out of the bottom, and I'll back it off. I'll wait
Right.
like 5 minutes, bump it real quick. If bubbles come up right away, I'm like, that line's good. If they don't, I'm like, fuck, all right, there's a leak on this line.
Right.
But that's the reason I have to jump in pools is a lot of the plumbing runs to those floor grates on the bottom of these
Okay.
pools, and
Gotcha.
we also very common leak in pools is the light conduit. I did this high school out in the South Bay a few months ago where they had like 16 lights, and this is a little more in-depth system, but they had big 10-inch lines too and all that. And before I went to the pressure test, and I was like, hey, let me just seal these lights off for you, see if we can rule it out, because in their case they had a what's called a surge pit where their 10-inch lines went to the kind of bottom, like the lines would have to be cut for me to plug them and test them. So I was like, let's hold off from destroying the pool just to find your leak. Let's just plug these lights first. And what I typically do is I'll take like butyl tape, which is similar to bituthane for roofs. Because I mean, the alternative would be pull all the wires out and pressure test it, and we don't want to do that. So what we do is
Right.
we seal around between the wire and the conduit with this butyl tape and kind of stick it in, and it acts as a cork. So that's why I did that dive on that one. I was just sealing 16 lights, you know. So that was kind of a nice one. I typically require them to warm the pool if especially if it's
Right.
commercial.
Yeah. I
Yeah, if it's
mean,
a commercial one, I say you need to warm the pool. But some of these residential, they don't have heaters, so I just tough it out. But
that is interesting, man. I saw that video and I added it to the promotional clip, right? To promotional reel. And I was just wondering, I was like, he's okay, he's a leak detector, he's a plumber, but why is he scuba diving? Like, and I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I didn't have the time to Google and all that. I had a lot of things going on today. But that's really interesting, man. So, we've got a ton of questions for you, but I've got a few more of my own.
yeah.
What has been the most difficult task as far as the industry that you're in, this part of plumbing? I guess this falls under plumbing, right?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely plumbing. It's definitely a specialized plumbing. I'd say the hardest thing is talking to customers. Not going in and talking to customers. If everything goes fine, it's not hard at all. But what I saw a lot in the beginning of learning this trade is we are doing something that's not a perfect science. We are going off sound and gas. A lot of lines are PVC, so I can't locate where that line is. So it's all sound and gas. And I don't know how many times especially in the beginning, have gone back to jobs with, 6 construction workers staring at me with a huge hole in the ground and no leak
Right.
there.
Right.
And they're not too happy with me. And, we have to go back and we have to pretty much own up and say, this is what happened, or fuck, something's wrong here. It doesn't happen so much anymore because if I'm not sure, I don't market.
Right.
But that would be, I'd say, the hardest, or just explaining to the customer, hey, I marked it here, but it's actually under your vanity or your kitchen sink right over here, so we got to remove that. And them like, what? You marked it there, and me having to explain, that's why we have a 3-foot radius of where we mark it, because shit happens. But I guess that's the main thing. That's the hardest thing, I'd say.
Right, and you know what? I'll say this. One thing I noticed about leak detection. I've spoken to many people that are in the industry outside of the podcast. This is the very first time I bring somebody from that industry on the podcast. But one thing I noticed that there is that slight bit chance where you can mark something in the wrong location, right? Because,
Exactly.
like you said, you're working off of these instruments that aren't always going to be 100% accurate. But one thing that's good about that, I would rather hire somebody that has the equipment you have rather than me trying to figure it out on my own and have 6 holes in a slab of a home trying to
I've gotten
trace.
plenty of jobs like that.
Right, no, I've met plumbers where they open up one hole and they're like, oh well, okay, and they notice the water's coming from one direction. They open up another one, and now the water's coming from another direction. They open another one. Next, before you know, there's like 6 holes in the slab, and it becomes a
Oh yeah.
nightmare. So there is that slight bit chance, but it's totally worth hiring a specialist like yourself to come in and utilize the equipment that you have that I wouldn't have. So I just wanted to put that out there for the audience. Leak detection is very important in this industry, especially when it comes to an area where there's a lot of slab homes. Like where I live, most of the homes are slab, right?
Gotcha.
Not many of the homes in my area are above grade, except for mobile homes. Um,
Okay. Oh, so
so
you're dealing with it a lot.
Yes, correct. Yeah, we normally just, if I run into a slab leak or a potential slab leak, first thing I do, like you said, I go to the meter, make sure everything's off in the house. I go to the meter. If I see the meter still running, then there's a leak either outside of the home or inside of the home. And then I run a few more that tests, and from there, I don't even mess with it, man. I tell the customer, look, here's the number, call them up, they'll detect it, and they'll call us back, and either they'll repair it themselves or we'll come back and repair it for you. And that's usually the way I approach that situation. Now, what are your goals for 2021, 2020, the end of 2020, 2021, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What are your goals? Are you comfortable where you're at and becoming a manager in the company you're with? Are you planning to move on and do things on your own? Or is there any goals just in life period? Is there anything you have in mind?
Um, you know, I've listened to Eduardo on your last one. I have to agree with him. I've definitely, for a long time, wanted to do my own thing. And I still may at some point, but where I'm at now, I have some awesome bosses. They take care of me. They're, anything I need, they're willing to help me out. I talked to him, as I said, at this last little sit down with him, and just said, hey, I'm tired of the same thing every day, and I don't want to see myself in 10 years doing the same thing every day.
Right.
Which is why we're kind of talking about this manager role, where it's more of I'm going to have guys under me that I'm training, and I'm getting to where I'm at, and I'm going to be making money off their sales. So I guess my main goal for the next year is kind of get that going. I have a good friend of mine. I got a job with me. I'm working on him now, trying to get him up to par. And when he hits this certain threshold of sales, I'm going to be making money off each 1,000 he produces. So
Wow.
it's kind of cool. I made it clear to them that I don't. Because at some point I'm going to get bored. I'm going to want to go do my own thing and
Right.
something, change it up, and they're set on keeping me, and they're like, we'll do anything it takes to keep you. So we're willing to work with you. And, I've worked for a lot of asshole bosses. As I said, first construction company I worked for, I had to chase them down to get paid.
That's tough, man.
Yeah. But these guys, I've never worked for such good guys, so I'm really happy where I'm at the moment. But yeah, I guess my goal for the next year is implement that training program and get it going. I got to work on training guys older than me. That's always been an issue. Or it hasn't been an issue, but I can see it being harder than training a guy younger than me, you know?
Right, right,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, that's where I'm on that.
That's a great goal to have, man, and I'm really excited for you. It's really exciting to find out that somebody like yourself that's worked so hard to build a foundation within the company that you're in, I finally have the opportunity to move up along the the rankings and sort of say and be able to, like you said, to train somebody and be able to benefit off of that. That's a great opportunity to have. So we're gonna go ahead and open it up to the audience if that's okay with you. That's something that we
Yeah.
do here on the Boldcast Live. We open up to the audience. They have a great time with that. And I'm going to go ahead and take a few questions from them, and then we'll close things out. I know you want to get on with your day. Probably got your family to attend to. So we'll go ahead and square this away. All right, so we have the Lane Pipe 305. What machines are you using for leak detection, and what is an idea you have to make them better? Is there a machine particularly you favor, and is there something, an invention or something like that you think that, you know what, I can tweak this up and make it better?
Um, I'd say I don't personally have this machine, but I really want this one. It's called the SEBA KMT. I don't know if you follow City Water Conservation. Used to
Yes,
go
great guy.
Ninja Plumbing. Yeah, he's a hella
Yeah,
good guy. We're always chopping
yeah,
it up, talking shop. Um, he uses that equipment, which I think is extremely badass. Where it can actually, it's got a logger that saves the amount of friction you're getting in certain areas, and you can kind of compare them where it's louder, where it's producing the most signal. I'm kind of going off an older setup where it's just kind of a sound amplifier, which, in turn, my bosses see it as why spend more money when this works. But um, that would be the piece of equipment I would recommend for sure. Or Sewerin. Sewerin is an awesome one. When I went up for training out in Palm Springs, I got to use that, and I mean that is like the Cadillac of leak detection.
really. Okay, nice.
It's pretty badass. I believe it's German. A lot of this stuff it's not made in America. It's a lot of it's Germany actually, European countries. But as far as what to make it better, I mean, it's they have what's called a correlator, where we use it on municipal mains, where it's got an A and a B magnet, right? And all the in-ground valves, the big isolation valve for the city distribution. I'll put those magnets where I'm hearing the most friction, A and B, and I'll measure between those 2 points. I will put in this computer the kind of pipe. So let's say it's a 12-inch cast iron or a ductile iron or something. It detects that sound and puts it through this system and tells you exactly where the leak is between point A and point B.
Wow. So there's data involved with this system.
Exactly. It's like a onboard diagnostics for your car.
That is very interesting. That is it's amazing what technology is like nowadays. Is that something that just came out, or is that something that's been around for a while?
It's been around for a while. It used to be an $80,000 tool. I think you can buy it for I think the cheapest one I've seen is like 12 grand now. But it would be cool if they got that to a lower scale, where you could use it, in homes. It'll tell you exactly where the leak is. But
Right.
the way we find it, it's some of these jobs I'm in and out in 20 minutes.
Right.
We're pretty successful at what we do, and it's obviously it's not a perfect system, but it does work. And the only thing that kind of throws our detections off are I've run into sleeve lines that would throw it off. The water's
Okay.
coming out of sleeve, so I'm gonna mark it where it's coming out that sleeve. It's where all the equipment's saying the water's coming out, but in retrospect, it's way down that sleeve somewhere else. So I don't know how you would, unless you had X-ray vision, figure something out like that. But um,
That's interesting to know that. So a sleeve, right? And I've run into this many times whenever beating up a slab and going for a repair. Some of
mhm.
these pipes are sleeved, right? Before they pour the cement. So the concrete, rather. So that sleeve can throw you off completely.
Oh, big time,
Wow,
big
that's
time.
interesting.
Because our gas and the water friction is all going to be coming out that sleeve. Um, I guess the good news is when you get down to it, realize it's a sleeve, you could just pull a new line through. That's one of the pluses of a sleeve. But then there's some instances where you can't do that, and what I'll have to do is our plugs have extensions, and I can stick that 20 feet down the line. Um, to determine where it holds pressure at, and that's where the leak is. Or I do have a smaller. I got my rigid sewer camera here, but I have the smaller one, which is brand new out of the box, never been put in a drain line or a sewer, and I'll use that for domestic water sometimes, mostly for pools. Those are the kind of harder leaks to find, but a little camera always helps.
Right. I noticed that you do use rigid equipment. Tell us a little bit about that. What is your favorite piece of rigid equipment that you like to use? And also tell us how it helps you the most, in your line of work.
Um, Say I do love the Pro Press. That's definitely saves me a ton of time. Um,
So are you using a rigid press tool? The
yeah, it's the
241?
I think so. The big gun.
Okay. Got it. That's the 250 or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it goes up to 2 inch. But I did learn the other day. I came across this in wall leak, and it was on a hotline, and I soldered it because I was like, "Fuck, I haven't soldered in a while," and I was like, "Damn, I really need to work on my soldering." I've been
Three Sorry, I got corrected here by Flynn. It's the 340. That's what
340.
you got.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's the only downside of it. You don't solder as much, so you kind of are doing it every. That's I just noticed with me. I'm like, fuck, that doesn't look as good as I used to solder. But I definitely say the Pro Press. These cameras are insane. I mean, I located a sewer line out in Larkspur. It was 13 feet deep with that thing.
Wow.
Yeah. And believe me, I was there hours thinking my equipment was fucked up.
Right.
But in turn, I just told him to run a new line. But no, I mean the rigid equipment. I mean it's expensive, but it's worth the money. I mean it.
Worth every dollar, right?
Oh yeah, it
I
doesn't compare to
100%
anything
agree.
else.
I don't have the cameras or anything like that yet. I'm starting small, working my way up there. I want to get the 241, which is the slimmer the press tool. And then I want to eventually get the camera and all of that. I like the C40 and everything.
Hmm.
But you know what? Instagram is about to cut me off, man. I didn't realize we've been on for a whole hour already. I've got so
Oh.
many questions for you. I'm like, man, I really appreciate your time. It's awesome when I bring somebody here from a different part of the plumbing world, from a different part of the industry. There's so many questions to have. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and would you mind if I log off and then we'll close it and log back on and close it
Yeah,
out?
yeah, man, not a problem.
All right. So Instagram's giving me a minute and 30 seconds. I'll log off and we'll log back on.
All right, sounds good.
All right. I lost track of time, right? And thank you, Flintstone1, for correcting me. I don't do much pro press. I do, like I said, I don't do much of it, but I'm starting to get back into doing crimping. So I do eventually want to get a press tool for crimping and all of that for pecs. And, I have my eyes set on the 241 by Rigid. That's something that I really want. So big shout out to Flintstone for correcting me on that. I really appreciate that. And shout out to City Water Conservation. Great guy. You definitely want to follow him. He's got a great company. He's also another leak detector, and he does pressing as well. And it's a it's a great page to follow. So make sure you follow City Water Conservation. But anyway, I'm gonna log off, log back on, and then we'll close things out. I want to keep y'all. I don't want to keep y'all up too late. We'll move along, okay? Give me about 5 minutes to post this on my IGTV. Welcome back, everyone. I appreciate you guys sticking with the podcast here, the Bocast Live. I lost track of time. I didn't realize I was on a whole hour with him, but so many amazing questions and so many amazing answers to those questions. What we want to do is go ahead, and I lost about 10 questions there because I lost track of time. Go ahead and start submitting some questions. Let's take at least 3 or 4 more questions from him before we close out. So go ahead and submit your questions down below, and I'm going to go ahead and bring him back in and on the podcast here. Hey, man, thank you for sticking in with us, man. I apologize for that.
Yeah, not a problem, man.
I appreciate you coming back on. So many awesome questions, so much awesome information here. And this is all going to go on my IGTV where everybody can go back and learn about all the things you had to talk about. But one thing I want to touch on as they go ahead and submit some more questions there. I lost a bunch of questions. You had about 13 questions there that I lost because I lost track of time. But we were having such a great conversation. So one last question for myself, and then we'll go to the audience again. What words of encouragement do you have for somebody that's getting into the leak detection world?
Just keep going. Don't let hiccups or even bad days screw you up, or just make you want to quit. It takes determination and just keep going at it. I know a lot of days in the beginning, like I wanted just to go home instead of go back to that job that I knew I was off at, and it just takes just doing it. And just like anything else, work hard, take pride in it. Take pride in your work. Just because our shit gets buried doesn't mean you don't need to take pride in it. And I guess, yeah, that would be it.
That's awesome, man. Great words of encouragement for those of you out there that are interested. And you don't have to, maybe you're in plumbing and you're thinking about, breaking off with the company you're with and moving on to going into business for yourself. And you decide, I just want to do leak detection. So anybody out there that's interested in doing leak detection, or maybe you own a plumbing company and you want to branch off and have a leak detection department, right? Anybody out there, this guy right here, he's been in it for a long time. Great information. And like I said, this will all be on my IGT for everybody to go back to as reference and kind of learn and take notes. So we'll go ahead and take our last few questions from the audience. All right, here we go. What would you say is the hardest part of leak detection? By P. Vallis 23.
Hardest part, as I said before, talking to customers when things don't go exactly as planned, that can be hard. Or, let's say I wrote an estimate for $1,800 to do something, and I'm seeing that their concrete is 10 inches thick. That's not something that I planned for. Letting them know, hey, it's going to be more than the estimate. It's all written on the estimate that this could add to it, but it's people still don't like to hear that they're going to have to pay more than they wanted to pay or originally planned on paying. That can be hard. You know, there's some leaks I run into that are just not by the book leaks.
Right.
We deal with shit. This is a crazy one for you. Leaks that seal themselves during testing.
Really?
Us putting our gas in the line and trying to locate the leak will sometimes push a piece of debris inside that leak, and
Oh
their
boy.
meter will completely stop spinning, and they won't have a leak anymore. The lines will hold pressure, and I had to see it to believe it, because I mean they told me this, and I'm like, that's some bullshit. Someone was just off on their leak, but
Right.
it actually happens. We've jackhammered holes in slabs of like apartment buildings, and we get down, it's wet all around the pipe, and there's no leak. We have to say, hey, it will. I mean, at this point, I think we just replaced some pipe, but I mean, we used to leave these holes open, and they'd call us when they started again, and we get a call 2 days later, oh, the hole's filling with water, and it's like, just flow and all that will open up the leak again, and that can be very hard to tell a customer.
Yeah, that it seems like there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to leak detection, and it seems like you really got to put in your time and really soak in all the knowledge and have the right equipment, right?
Oh yeah.
Uh, so that you become efficient in that line of work. Otherwise, it's gonna be very tough for you. Let's see here. Let's see. I think that you answered that question just now, right? What is the most challenging situation you have had in finding a leak? Like you said, it's probably a leak, debris getting in the middle of it, debris
Yeah.
getting in the way and kind of resealing it and causing it to hold pressure, right?
Exactly. Or the ones, I've had to walk away from. There's these humongous properties we run into where it's spent 3-4 hours, and I'm not coming up with anything, and it definitely sucks to have, I just put all this time in, but who knows, there's situations where it's been two parcels that's been split up into multiple homes, and there's lines running under the neighbor's house. We're not going to find that kind of shit. So that's the most challenging ones, are the ones we've walked away from because we can't find it.
Gotcha. Okay, here we go. All right, here we got blue collar mission, best detection starter tool for a new startup. So what would be somebody's just starting into leak detection? What's the number one tool you'd recommend?
Um, Man, it's city water conservation would be best for that question. I'd say that, he uses the SEBA KMT. Um, I think it does everything. That's a good one. Um, I'm blanking on the name. I had one I got off eBay a while back that was pretty straightforward. Um, Ended up selling it, but it was a pretty cheap one. Yeah, or as he says,
Moisture meter?
moisture meter is a good one. Yeah, the FLIR. I guess I'm talking more about the pipe leak detection, but as far as other leak detection, the FLIR, the infrared camera, I use that damn near every day. That's a really good one, and moisture meters good as well. Pressure gauge.
Very nice, very nice. Great question there. We're gonna take one more, all right? Here
Uh-oh.
we go. Why not? And we'll bring up city water conservation. Explain to the viewers the way plumbers can get the dink and dunk insurance work with simple and a couple inexpensive tools.
Yeah, so what he's talking about is, as I said, we get a lot of insurance claim work. One of the main reasons I started this Instagram is because every day I'm taking pictures for each one of my jobs. Each one of my jobs gets a report. And so I was like, hey, I'm taking all these pictures. I might as well start an Instagram with them, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's as far as getting those claims and the insurance jobs. If you have a good report, just kind of saying this is what's going on, I mean, it's endless work. People are always going to have water damage that's plumbing related, and you know they're not going to go with somebody who's just going to write something out, just say the toilet was leaking. You know, they're going to go with somebody who takes a picture of a moisture meter, documents the damage, and saying it's caused by this. Here's our estimate to repair it. You know, it's a lot of how we get in the door. You know, it's when people have leaks for a long time and their water bill is high, the water department works with them a lot of times, and they'll reimburse them that usage as long as it's fixed. Our reports have pictures of the leaks, pictures of the repairs, pictures of the patch, which is, you know, exactly what a homeowner needs to get a little break on their, you know, $3,000 water bill. There's plenty of apps out there to do it. Pronto Forms is one of them. But it's, you know, it's the new age that I'm seeing with this company, and other companies are slowly starting to do it, but it's yeah, it definitely gets the foot in the door over the guy who's just writing up something handwritten. You know, I still handwrite my estimates, but as far as the reports go, you know, they get them same day within an hour of me leaving the site because it's all on an app.
That's a great question again, by City Water Conservation. Again, a great guy. I plan to have him on the podcast here very soon. So is there any last words you want to leave us with, man? I've had you on here forever, man, and it's been
all good,
absolutely amazing, man. I mean, what an amazing interview. All the interviews today have been amazing, but you seem to do very well with these interviews, and I really appreciate your time. You know, is there anything else you want to leave us with?
You know, I just want to say huge props to you, man. Chris, you're like, fuck, man. When I saw your page when I first got on this, I was blown away, you know, with the videos and all the things you do. I'm like, man, how does this guy do it? You know, I'll do a quick little like a sped up video, you know, that's put some music behind it. That's as far as I can go. But your shit,
you do great with your videos.
Your shit's good, and I love what you're doing. I haven't really been too much of a podcast guy. I listen to Joe Rogan a little bit, but I'm definitely going to be tuning in on your show for sure from here out.
Thank you very much, man. Joe Rogan is a huge inspiration of mine. When I first started listening to podcasts a few years ago, I remember the very first Joe Rogan Experience episode before it was the Joe Rogan Experience. You know, and you know, it's awesome to hear that you mentioned him because I listen to Joe Rogan Experience all the time. He just had a massive deal with Spotify. I think it was like $100 million deal.
I read about that.
Yeah, a huge deal, which I thought was pretty cool. It takes podcasting to another level. But thank you so much for coming on the Boldcast Live. I really truly appreciate your time. I hope to have you back on again. Again, for those of you out there really interested in this individual, you'll see all the information. It'll be all on my IGTV, as well as, you know, I'm sure it'd be okay if people had questions, they could hit you up in your DMs, and I'm sure you'd be able to answer those questions and spread the knowledge, man. So thank you so much, man. Take care of yourself and stay safe, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, you too, bro. Have a good night, man.
You too, man.